There are 12 mistakes that I see beginners making with their Mini 5 Pros, and while some of these might just be annoying things that you didn't know, others could result in a crash and you losing your drone. So if you're new around here, my name is Justin, it is great to see your wonderful smiling face, and if you have been here before, it is great to have you back. So let's get started with the first one, which is going to be obstacle avoidance. Now the Mini 5 Pro has full 360-degree obstacle avoidance, but it has its limits and it's not active all the time. So first off, I want to talk about when obstacle avoidance is on versus off. So obstacle avoidance is available in Cine and normal mode. Obstacle avoidance is not active when you're flying in sport mode, so bear that in mind. And in Cine and normal mode, you have several options here for the obstacle avoidance. So in order to access those settings, we need to go into the menu system by clicking the three dots in the top right hand corner. And you can see here we have the option to set obstacle avoidance to brake, bypass, and off. So even in normal and Cine mode, you can turn obstacle avoidance off. I recommend leaving it on, and if you set obstacle avoidance to brake, when the drone senses an obstacle, it will come to a stop, and if you set it to bypass, when the drone senses an obstacle, it will find a safe route around it. So bear this in mind whilst you're flying and make sure that your obstacle avoidance settings are set appropriately to the type of flying that you're trying to do. The next thing I want to talk about is the limitations of obstacle avoidance. Now, obstacle avoidance is good, but it is never 100%. It's very good at detecting large obstacles, but it cannot see things like thin wires or fine branches with no leaves on them. These types of things are basically invisible to obstacle avoidance, and one of the most common crashes I see is people crashing into electrical wires, telephone wires, that kind of stuff. Obstacle avoidance cannot detect these things. A quick simple visualization I like to tell people is if you hold your arm up, think about the diameter of your arm. If what you're trying to detect is less than the diameter of your arm, the chances are obstacle avoidance won't see it. It's not a hard set fact, it's just a sort of easy visualization for people to realize that obstacle avoidance can't see smaller things. Now, even if you're putting all of these things into the best practice, obstacle avoidance is still never 100%. So if you're flying through a particularly tricky environment where you're leaning heavily on obstacle avoidance, always make sure to be monitoring the drone, using the controller so that you can take over, cancel tracking if that's something that you're doing to prevent any potential crashes. Obstacle avoidance, never 100%. It can and does fail regularly for some people. So just make sure that you're not trusting it 100% and you understand its limitations. The next thing I want to talk about is I understand when you get a new drone, it's super exciting. You want to get it out of the box and fly it straight away. Please, 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 do not fly your brand new drone for the first time inside your house. I have seen way too many posts of people crashing these things from flying it in their house the first time, hitting the walls, hitting the ceilings, whatever it might be. Inside is a very tricky situation for drones, low light visibility, no GPS signal, all of this stuff, and the fact that if you're a new user, you probably don't have full control over the drone and know what all the sticks do. It's a recipe for disaster. Take your new drone, go outside to a nice big wide open space where you've got plenty of room for error, fly it outside there for the first time. Please, please, please don't do it for the first time inside your house. Okay, the next thing I see people getting confused over is they confuse GPS signal for the controller to drone link signal. This is not the case. So in the top right hand corner of the screen, we have a little symbol there with a number next to it. That is our GPS indicator. And you can see here currently we have 39 satellites showing. That is how many satellites the drone has physically locked onto in space in order to get its positioning, do its return to home, all of that good stuff. This does not indicate the link strength between the drone and the controller. So I see people saying that, oh, I've flown far away, but the signal lost, but I had great GPS signal. GPS signal does not relate to the drone connected to the controller. That is shown two symbols across to the left by the RC signal strength indicator. It's a bar graph, looks similar to what you see on your mobile phone, and that actually shows you the signal strength from the controller to the drone. Now, a couple of tips to help you get better signal strength or better signal performance. The signal from the controller actually comes from the flat portions here of these antennas, so the backs and also on the fronts there of the antennas. So what you want to do most of the time is have the antennas sort of angled like this, and then you want to point the controller physically towards where the drone is in real space. So for me, the drone is currently over there, so I'm pointing the controller towards it. The antennas are facing towards the drone. We're going to have good signal strength. If I now take the drone and I fly it behind me and I continue facing this way, I'm going to see that my signal starts to drop off more rapidly. That's because the signal is having to pass through my body before getting to the drone. So to improve the signal, just spin around and face towards the drone again. So That's a really quick and easy way to help improve your overall signal. Just make sure your controller and the antennas are facing towards the actual drone. And another thing that you can do is try to restrict the amount of obstacles you put in between the controller and the drone. You see, the controller and the drone will have the best signal connection with a clear line of sight. And a clear line of sight means no obstacles in between the controller and the drone. So currently the drone is in a nice clear line of sight, but if I just fly it over here, let me just do this, and you can see there's a tree over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the tree in between me and the drone, and that is going to be an obstacle blocking the signal. So if I now spin around, you can see me in the distance there, indicated by the little H, and the tree there below me. So if I now drop down on the drone, we're going to have this tree come in between me and the drone, and that is going to be an obstacle blocking a clear line of sight of the radio communication. Now in this instance, one tree is not really enough to cause too much of an issue, but if you're flying behind lots of trees or behind buildings and stuff, these will all absorb bits of the signal and reduce your overall connection. And bigger things like ground obstacles, I like to call them, hills, mountains, cliffs, all that kind of stuff, they will completely destroy your signal. Signal cannot pass through solid ground, but it can sort of make its way through trees and a building, etc, etc. So try to always maintain a nice clear line of sight between your controller and the drone, and keep yourself facing the drone for the best signal performance. Now, if you're getting some good tips from this video, which I'm sure you are, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button down below. Last year I was pushing for 50,000 subscribers and we managed to hit it before the end of the year. So thank you to every single one of you who pressed that subscribe button. But this year I'm pushing for the big one. We're pushing for 100,000 subscribers. So if you could do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. It would be incredible if we could reach that milestone, but I can't do it without you. So if you're enjoying this video, just do me a little favor and tap the button. Okay, moving on from that, the next one is going to be making sure that our return to home settings are correct, and also that our signal loss action is set correctly. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if we go into the menu system again, click the three dots in the top right hand corner, and if we go down a little bit in the safety tab, we can see here the return to home settings, and here it says advanced return to home. We have optimal or preset. I always recommend we use optimal there. It's the most battery efficient way of getting home, and it just means the drone can make a few more decisions on its own when it comes to making its way home safely. You can also use preset, but what preset means is when the drone loses connection or return to home is triggered, the drone will stop and then ascend to the auto return to home altitude, which you set below it, and it will then fly all the way back at that altitude and then descend to land once it reaches the home point. This can be a little bit inefficient when it comes to battery and just takes longer overall, and for most situations I find optimal is completely fine. And the auto return to home altitude, you want to have this set high enough to clear any potential obstacles that the drone might encounter on its way back home. Most of the time I just say to set this to the maximum legal limit for your country. In that case, the drone can always ascend to its maximum legal altitude in order to clear any potential obstacles on the way back. If it is in optimal, the chances are it's not going to reach this altitude on its way back, but it just gives the drone enough altitude so that it can if it needs to. So those are the return to home settings, and I want to talk about the signal loss action. So if I scroll down a bit further and go onto the advanced safety settings here at the bottom, I'm going to click on that, and here we can see signal loss. This is the signal loss action I'm talking about, and we need to have this set appropriately depending on the environment that we're flying in. Now, 99% of times you're flying the drone in a nice big open scene like this, big landscape, so you want this set to return to home. What that means, if for any reason the drone loses signal connection to the controller, the drone will automatically engage return to home and fly back to the point at which you took off, or the home point. So for most situations, this is actually preferable. The next one we have is descend. Descend is an option that I actually don't recommend people use. I just feel like it's not a very optimal setting, and the one next to it, hover, I think is much better in that type of situation. Now, that type of situation is going to be a situation where there are potential obstacles above the drone. So if you're flying under a forest canopy, or if you're flying indoors, something like this, if you lose signal, you don't want the drone to go into return to home because there are obstacles above the drone, and the first thing it does is try to ascend a little bit to get out of the way, and in that instance it's going to crash into the trees, into the roof, something like that, and return to home is not going to be optimal. So in this situation, set it to hover. In that case, when the drone loses signal, you're also going to have a pretty good idea of whereabouts it is. You can then move yourself with the controller physically closer to the drone, recover that signal, take control over again, and then carry on flying. So just make sure that your signal loss action reflects the type of environment in which you're flying. Okay, the next point is going to be related to night video mode here on the Mini 5 Pro. Now I know a lot of you have upgraded from the Mini 4 Pro to the Mini 5 Pro, and on the Mini 4 Pro there was a dedicated night video mode, where on the Mini 5 Pro there isn't. And the reason that is because the Mini 5 Pro can automatically detect when it's shooting at night, and therefore it's going to automatically apply those optimal settings in the background to give you the best footage possible. So if you're looking through the menu system and you can't find night video, it's not there. Everything is already being done in the background, so don't worry about it. Just fly and capture stunning nighttime footage. Okay, the next one is going to be related to flying at the beach. Now I know a lot of people, they head out for a beach day, take their drone with them, capture some beautiful footage of the sea, the waves, all of that good stuff. What you don't want to do at the beach is take off and land from the surface of the sand. Sand is an abrasive material. That's one reason people put it on paper, to sand things down, sandpaper. What you don't want is it getting all into the mechanisms and workings of your drone. So when the drone fires up and spins up the propellers, it's going to blow sand up, it's going to get in the motors, in the gimbal assembly, and this is the last place that you want sand to get. It is going to wear away these components faster, and I've seen situations where sand gets into the gimbal motors, it gets stuck, and then the gimbal can't operate properly. So in this situation, find somewhere else to take off close to the beach and then do it that way to avoid the sand. You can also use something like a landing pad to give you a safe, clean, sand-free platform to take off and land from, or the best option here is just to hand launch and hand catch if you know how and you're comfortable doing so. So yeah, by the beach, please, please, please don't take off and land from the surface of the sand. So all the tips that I've given you so far, plus the ones coming next, are always to help avoid beginner mistakes. But if you want to take it a step further and get way ahead of the curve, then you can actually enroll into my advanced drone videography course, where I teach you everything about flying your drone safely, how it flies, how to optimize your camera settings, how to employ good cinematography and storytelling to capture world-class footage, and it will take you anywhere from a beginner or an intermediate drone pilot all the way up to an advanced drone pilot and a cinematic genius. People are absolutely loving it over there. It is completely transforming the way that people fly and film, and I know that it will do exactly the same for you. So I'm going to leave that linked in the video description, and I also have a completely free weekly newsletter where I give you the latest drone news, hot tips, and even a bit of a sneak peek into what's going on behind the scenes in my life when it comes to drones. It is completely free to sign up to. I send it to you every single week, and I will also leave that linked in the video description. Okay, the next tip is going to be related to our controller and when we come to pack it away. Now I see a lot of people just putting these controllers back into the bags with these sticks attached, but we don't want to be doing that. DJI made these sticks removable for a reason, as I drop it on the floor. This stick needs to be removed from the controller when you pack it away. Otherwise, what you can do is you put it in the bag, and the bag can actually just press on these sticks ever so slightly, and that's just putting unnecessary extra load on our gimbal. It's going to deform the gimbal springs, and then over time this is going to build up to a point where the control sticks don't center properly and the drone can be drifting left and right, and even after calibrations it still isn't good. So what you need to do, please just remove those sticks before you put that controller back into your bag. It takes a couple of seconds, but it's going to save you the cost of a new controller in the long run. I know some people like to get controller covers which have like bulges over the control sticks to stop them from being moved. That's also a good solution, but the easiest way, just remove the sticks before you put the controller back in the bag. Now the next tip is also going to be related to packing your drone away, and it's going to be related to the propellers. Now the Mini 5 Pro features locking propellers, and what that means, when the motor spins up and flings them out, these propellers fling out and the centrifugal force locks them in place. You can see here, now this propeller is acting like a rigid propeller. Well, it flopped down there, but the thing we need to bear in mind here is when we're packing this away, this propeller lock can make the propellers feel quite difficult to close. Now here you can see the propeller doesn't want to close, it is locked in place. Now what I don't want to do is force and force and force until it eventually closes. What you just want to do is push the propeller towards the center of the motor. So push it this way, so give it a little push, and now the lock is disengaged and you can fold it nice and easily. Just make sure that you're not putting extra strain on your propellers and stuff. All you're going to do is you're going to wear down that locking mechanism prematurely. You're going to end up going through more sets of propellers for no real reason, and especially in places like the US where spare parts are getting harder and harder to get hold of, you need to be looking after your equipment. And if you're also struggling with the gimbal cover that comes with the Mini 5 Pro, I do have a video explaining how to do that way easier than you just fumbling around trying to figure it out. So I'll leave that also linked in the video description. Okay, so the next point is going to be related to charging your drone controller, all of that good stuff. Now, a lot of devices these days don't come with a USB wall adapter, they just come with a cable. Now, because of this, we need to make sure that we're actually using a really high quality, high output wall adapter in order to charge our devices. So when you get your drone, don't just go rummaging through your drawers and find that old Nokia brick from 10 years ago and think, that'll do. It most certainly will not do. You'll plug it in and it will probably be charging for 2 days and barely make any progress. What you need is, I always recommend absolute minimum, you want a 30 watt output USB charger, and you need to make sure it's USB PD, which is power delivery, and you can go all the way up to like 65, 100 watts. It doesn't matter on the higher end of scales, because PD is only going to deliver the amount of power that the appliance is like requesting. So a lot of times I plug it into my 100 watt USB charger and it charges absolutely fine, no problems whatsoever. So just make sure you're using a high quality wall adapter in order to get the best results when charging your equipment. The next thing that I see people getting confused about is SD cards and where footage is being stored on the drone versus the controller. The way you have to think about it is, the drone is filming the footage, therefore the footage is being stored on the drone. That is the high quality end result footage. On the controller, you are also going to get a lower quality cache file. This allows you to just quickly check back your footage if you're still flying, for example, just to make sure that you've got the shot, but that is not the high quality end result. So because of that, you need to make sure that you're getting your finished footage from the drone itself. Now you can be recording to either the drone's internal storage or an SD card that is in the drone, but just make sure that that is where you're getting your final footage from. On the controller, it's only going to be those low quality files and those cache files, and that's not what you're going to want to be using for your final video. Now, when it comes to SD cards, there is an SD card slot in the controller. Personally, I've never felt the need to use that, and I do a lot of screen recording for all these YouTube videos. But if you do want extra capacity, you can put an SD card in there to, save more screen recordings and all of that good stuff. But the thing you need to make sure is you have a high quality SD card in the drone. It needs to be at least U3 A2 rated. And I always recommend people just going with something like the SanDisk Extreme Pro card and stick with 128 or 256. You don't need bigger than that. Bigger SD cards are also more susceptible to data corruption. So stick with a 128 or a 256. Make sure you get it from a reputable seller. There are a lot of fake cards out there. Make sure you're buying it from like an Amazon seller with thousands of reviews on there, so you know you're getting a genuine card, and you should be good to go. And the last thing that I see people struggling with is the Mini 5 Pro, well, at least the Fly More kits, they come with these things. These are ND filters, and a lot of people have absolutely no idea what these things are or what they do. And I have a fully dedicated video telling you everything you need to know about using ND filters on your Mini 5 Pro, and I will leave that video linked just here. And if for some reason that video doesn't speak to you, then maybe this one here will instead. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button on your way out. Go and check out my newsletter and my course in the description. Have an amazing day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.